Welcome back to the Brittany Hughes Show, everybody. Happy Thursday. I hope you all had a wonderful and safe 4th of July weekend last weekend. This was a really special one in my family. My son, who just turned 3, actually got to see fireworks for the first time, which was really awesome. His first 4th of July, he was only a few days old, so of course he didn't get to experience it then. And then of course came COVID and all the fireworks were shut down and we didn't get to go see them last year. So this was actually a really wonderful experience for us. So I hope you all had a fantastic holiday yourselves. It's also, of course, been another crazy week of leftist lies and outright falsehoods, and so little time to debunk them all in, but I wanted to hit a couple of the highlights from this week, and I got to start with a small admission. For those of you that have followed me for some time, this actually might come as a little bit of a shock, but I have to admit, I don't know if it's because I'm an optimist. I don't know if it's because I try to see the best in people. I don't know if maybe I just had the wool pulled over my eyes. I'm really not sure why, but I feel like I used to genuinely believe in my heart that liberals were trying as best they could to argue in good faith for their side of things, no matter what the issue was, whether we were talking about taxes or universal health care or even issues like abortion. It wasn't so much that I tried to see where they were coming from the standpoint of seeing if I agreed, although it's always kind of good to, to test your theories and to weigh your own beliefs against truth and to make sure that you are on steady ground. But I think that I at least thought at one point that the left genuinely believed that they were correct and that they thought that they had a basis to stand on and that they were arguing in favor of things that they truly believed were solutions or were positives or were for the greater good or for the betterment of mankind or whatever, and that they simply were wrong, that my solutions to problems simply differed from theirs, but that they were just as sincere and genuine in their belief that they were correct. I no longer believe that. And I think that you don't have to look any further than a couple of things that happened this week to see that leftists are not actually interested in promoting even what they believe to be the truth. I don't think that's where they're coming from anymore. I think that the goal of the left at this point, and this is something they are extremely good at, and that I think conservatives have historically been very poor at, and we need to get better at recognizing this. The left wants to put the right on the defensive. The left isn't interested in coming up with solutions to problems or actually looking at an issue and figuring out what the root cause of it is and trying to make things better for the American people or better for the oppressed or better for the suffering. All they are interested in doing is making sure that the right looks as uncompassionate and uncaring as possible. That is what the left's goal is. It's really not about finding solutions. It's simply about winning votes by demonizing the right. And I want to talk about a couple of issues that came up this week that are based on outright falsehoods, outright lies, and they're absolutely shameless. And unfortunately, millions of people are buying into it, all in the goal of demonizing conservatives and painting them as heartless cretins. Take, for example, on the issue of abortion, which again has been just front and center for now a couple of weeks after the SCOTUS decision was handed down. I did an entire podcast on it last week, debunking some of the biggest lies that the left has been peddling about abortion. I encourage you to go back and watch that full episode. But here is one that keeps cropping up. And again, millions of people seem to be buying into this. And I find this very interesting for a couple of reasons. I want to show you this tweet by Hillary Burton. If you don't know who that is, that's not a huge surprise. She's an actress. She is married to Jeffrey Dean Morgan. She was an actress on the show One Tree Hill, which is about all she's known for. It's a teeny bopper show. I used to watch it back in like high school. It's back when she was younger. And this is what she had to say, again, as the left has continued to harp on the abortion experiences of prominent liberals in Hollywood as kind of a way to normalize this and make it out like everybody has an abortion and everything's perfectly fine. And here's all these women that couldn't have done all these great things if they hadn't had access to abortion. Here's what she had to say. Having an abortion after my fetus died allowed for my uterus to heal in a way that made it healthy enough to carry future pregnancies. So, again, this is Hillary Burton's experience. It was put in a giant listicle of all of these Hollywood celebrities, all of these prominent people that have spoken out about their abortion experiences. A lot of celebrities have come out. Many of them have already admitted that they've had abortions. That's been long since common knowledge for a lot of these people. Stevie Nicks, for example, who said that, she would never have been able to make the music for Fleetwood Mac if she had not had an abortion that enabled her to not be a mother and to be a band member. And now she's made all this music and all of that. Quite frankly, I'm pretty sure that Fleetwood Mac would have been better off without Stevie Nicks. I'm not really sure that killing your child is worth it to spin around singing Gold Dust Woman and waving a shawl, but whatever. So Hillary Burton is apparently one of these actresses that is now claiming that she had an abortion after my fetus died, and it allowed for my uterus to heal in a way that made it healthy enough to carry future pregnancies. That is a whole bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't even make any sense. Doesn't even make any sense. So let's start here. And again, I did a whole podcast on this last week. You can go back and listen to it. But just to reiterate, this is not an abortion. What Hillary Burton is describing here is not an abortion. This is a miscarriage. Now, a miscarriage can be classified as what's called a spontaneous abortion, but there is a massive difference between a spontaneous abortion that your body does and an induced or an elective abortion that you choose so that you are no longer pregnant. Massive, massive difference here. If you have a D&C, if you have a medical procedure to extract an unfortunately deceased baby that has died of natural causes that your body is not expelling on its own, that is not the same as having an abortion in the way that it is commonly understood. That is not the same thing. At that point, there is nothing to abort. There's simply something to remove. The death has already happened. It is tragic. It is absolutely horrible. It is heartbreaking for the millions and millions of women who have experienced this. But that is not the same as an elective or an induced abortion in which an alive baby is either killed and then removed or is removed alive in pieces with the goal of terminating the pregnancy so that the woman is no longer with child. This is a completely different thing. When she says that that procedure allowed for my uterus to heal in a way that made it healthy enough to carry future pregnancies, again, that's a whole bunch of gobbledygook that doesn't really make sense. It's not as if she hadn't had this procedure that her uterus would have healed wrong. That's not how this works. If she hadn't had this procedure and her body had not expelled the baby on its own, then it's quite possible that she would have gone septic and could have died. We're talking about a deceased baby that is still in the woman's body that is being removed as an emergency medical procedure. So none of this makes sense in the context of elective or induced abortions, which is what we're talking about in the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned and states now implementing restrictions on elective abortions. We're not talking about miscarriage care, just like we're not talking about ectopic pregnancy care. That's not the same thing. Now, I'm not really sure why Hillary Burton is attempting to claim that she is having an abortion. This is what kind of worries me a little bit here, is that abortion is now not a tragic thing. Abortion is now trendy. It's now trendy to say that you've had one. It's no longer looked at as something that is sad or something that is the result of desperation or a woman that is vulnerable or a woman that needs help. Now, it's cool to have one. Now everybody who on the left wants to kind of join in this club to be able to say, oh, well, I had an abortion and it was totally fine. So that's problem number one, is in an effort to normalize this to the point where everybody has one, kind of like everybody's eating a Happy Meal. The other serious concern with this is a clear push by the left. There's only one reason to conflate miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies and these tragic situations that happen through no fault of anybody's. It's not the woman's choice. It's not the baby. It's simply a very sad reality in the world of pregnancy and childbirth that these things sometimes happen. And the need to conflate miscarriages and miscarriage care with induced and elective abortions is an effort by the left to make this sound like it's not an unnatural, grotesque, barbaric procedure. If you can make this sound like the same thing, that a miscarriage and an abortion to remove an already dead baby and an abortion to remove an alive baby that might just not be wanted or might not be convenient, if you can make those sound like the same thing, you can do two things. You can normalize abortion and make it sound natural, as though it's not barbaric, as though it doesn't murder a child, as though it doesn't tear a child limb from limb, as though it doesn't poison a child. Make it sound natural, but then you can also use that argument to demonize conservatives who want to take away reproductive care and make it sound as though conservatives don't care about women who desperately want their babies and who tragically lose them through natural miscarriages, through unforeseen circumstances, through things that are not their choice. So that's exactly what they want to do, right? They want to blur these lines and make it sound like it's the same exact thing. And again, I go back to my original point. This has nothing to do with protecting women. It's very clear when you make these arguments, when you start trying to conflate miscarriage care and induced abortions, it's very clear that you're not actually looking to find solutions. You're not actually looking at the abortion issue and asking questions like, why are women having abortions? What circumstances are they in that makes them feel like that's the only option? How can we better reach out to make sure that women feel supported? Even if you're pro-choice, even if you believe that abortion, at least at some point, should be on the table as an option. The left has absolutely no interest in looking at the root causes of why women choose abortion to try to make life better for those women, to try to make sure that they have a more positive experience. And you can tell that the left clearly understands that this is a situation in which many women are vulnerable and scared. Take Elizabeth Warren, for example, who actually said this past week that pregnancy clinics that help women carry their babies to term should be stopped nationwide. Here is literally what she had to say about pregnancy clinics. Remember, these are pregnancy clinics that offer free healthcare, free resources, free baby food and clothing, free parenting classes, free counseling, free mental health care to women who choose to carry, which you would think if you were pro-choice, you'd also be supporting these pregnancy clinics. Here's what she had to say about those clinics. The idea that centers have grown up to prey on women or prey on people who are pregnant, because we can't call them women anymore, people who are pregnant and vulnerable and seeking help, is fundamentally wrong. So now, of course, we're talking about clinics that are preying on people who are pregnant. We can't even say women, but we're going to talk about clinics preying on people who are pregnant by daring to offer them baby formula and daring to let them see ultrasounds so that they actually understand what their baby looks like before they move forward with whatever choice they're going to make. She followed that up by saying this: we should stop it nationwide. We might move more aggressively to make sure that someone doesn't face that bait and switch that could be traumatic at a time that that person is already under stress. So she admits that women, whether she wants to say it or not, who are pregnant that might find themselves facing an unplanned pregnancy are vulnerable, and that this could be a time of trauma and stress for them. But you notice there's no effort whatsoever to try to better the situation that this woman might be in that is causing a pregnancy to be stressful or traumatic. There's no effort to find solutions to that problem. So instead, there's an effort to normalize abortion as natural as a miscarriage, to the point where really there is absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's interesting, I think, that the left has to go there. That the left has to tell a lie that egregious, that insulting to millions of women that have been through this circumstance, millions of women that have been through the trauma of miscarriage, particularly what we call silent miscarriages, which is where they don't find out that there's anything at all wrong with their baby until they go to a doctor and the doctor can't find a heartbeat or can't detect movement. It is a traumatic experience for women who desperately want their children. And to try to equate that with an elective or induced abortion is absolutely grotesque. But that's what they're going to do. And you see it time and time again in just about every issue. This week, we also saw yet another mass shooting in the United States of America. Again, I don't want to rehash everything I said before, but I point you to an earlier episode where I broke down the profile of a mass shooter in the United States and things that they tend to have in common, and things that as a society, if we really wanted to address this issue, we would be looking at, but we can't because we can't judge anybody. We can't question anybody's lifestyle choices. Instead, we're supposed to blame the gun, ban the gun, whatever. This is another instance in which, again, I look at the way that the left has handled this issue, and I look at the immediate reaction to Monday's shooting in Highland Park, and you can tell that they are not interested in finding solutions. The only goal, immediately, right off the bat, is to use this as a weapon to make conservatives look as uncompassionate as possible. So just to rehash what we saw in Highland Park, there was a 21, some places have labeled him 22. I don't really know what age he was, 21 or 22-year-old young man who crouched atop a building and fired into a parade route on July 4th for absolutely no reason at all than to cause carnage and damage. And he killed at least 7 people, wounded a whole bunch more, in what has tragically become a repeated story that we've seen over and over and over again, because again, we're not willing to deal with the root issues of this problem that we have continued to see. So immediately after this happened, the left took to social media and started labeling this guy as a right-wing Trump supporter and a white supremacist. There hadn't even been hardly any information that had come out about this Yahoo. And that's the immediate response that we saw from the left. Again, because it has nothing to do with actually looking at the profile of a mass shooter to better understand how we can prevent this in the first place, or finding solutions to this problem. No, the immediate reaction is to make the right look as bad as possible, to try to tie this guy in some way, shape, or form to Trump, to conservatives, to white people. That's the immediate reaction. So I just want to take a second here for 2 seconds and look at this guy. You tell me whether you think that this looks like the average Trump supporting conservative young man. Now, I'm not saying that no Trump supporter in the entire United States of America has pink hair. I'm not saying that, there's no Biden supporter that is clean cut with a buzz cut. We obviously, everybody looks different, and that's fine. There's diversity, but it's interesting that this is the exact opposite of what you typically see the left screaming about when it comes to the look of the average Trump supporter. Right? If you asked a liberal, if you asked the average leftist what a Trump-supporting young white man looks like, I can guarantee you that the image that they're going to describe is not this. It's not some scrawny little dude with face tattoos and long pink hair looking all kinds of stupid. What you're going to see is a description of somebody that looks more like Kyle Rittenhouse, or somebody that looks more like Charlie Kirk. Somebody that's got more of kind of the frat boy look, because that's sort of become indicative of, you must be a Trump supporter. All these guys sort of look like, young Brett Kavanaugh's, like they just came out of, Kappa Kappa Delta or whatever, and drinking a White Claw. It's funny how now all of a sudden, because the narrative needs to match it, and because we need this guy to be a white supremacist, all of a sudden, this dude we're supposed to buy is a Trump supporter. What I find really interesting, too, is that apparently after this guy shot a whole mess of people and wanted to flee the scene because instead of shooting himself like a lot of mass shooters do, he actually tried to make a getaway. Police say that he left the scene wearing women's clothing, and here's the kicker: to try to blend in to the crowd so that he wouldn't be seen and to try to cover up his face tattoos. I find that a little bit interesting. And this is pure speculation on my part, okay? But I feel like we need to be able to ask some of these questions. I feel like it's okay to question what we're being told and to question the narrative. Again, details are still coming out. And I think a lot of times we end up jumping to conclusions way before we have all the information. So I don't want to immediately jump to the conclusion that this guy was an actual crossdresser, that this guy was a transgender person. Um, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I do think it's very interesting that we're supposed to buy that this guy dressed in women's clothing to try to blend into the crowd. Here's a picture of this idiot fleeing the scene in women's clothing. Does that look a little bit conspicuous to you? I'm not really sure why he would be dressing in women's clothing to try to blend in. If you're a dude and you look like a dude, now granted, a shrimpy dude, but this guy did not look like a woman. Why would you dress in women's clothing to try to blend in? And in what way, shape, or form did this women's clothing hide his face tattoos? If you're a guy and you're trying to blend in, you're just going to wear dude's clothing. But we're supposed to buy that that's why he was wearing women's clothing, was to get away. Maybe he was. I don't know. I just think it's worth asking the question of how exactly did he think that he was going to blend in by wearing chicks' clothing? That's, trying to get inside the head of a madman, I understand, is always really difficult. They don't think normally. That's kind of the entire point. But I do find that to be very interesting. Of course, the immediate effort by the left to try to tie this guy into the right, to try to find anything on social media whatsoever, to try to make him out to be a Trump supporter. It turns out that he actually had a couple of pictures that he had taken of himself at a Trump rally, which of course the left immediately latched onto as he must be a Trump supporter. Interestingly, he actually looks like he may have been on the not so Trump supporting side of things in those pictures. Also, the fact that he apparently went to go see a presidential motorcade at one point and took pictures there. Of course, it's not clear or known what motorcade he was going to see. It could have been Biden, could have been Obama, it could have been anybody. But of course, the left immediately went to peg him as a Trump supporter through those pictures. And here's Michael Beschloss. Now, Michael Beschloss is, of course, a presidential historian. Absolute wealth of information when it comes to presidential history. Not much else. Not much else. Butterflies in the rest of his brain. Because here's what he tweeted. So apparently, after the shooter left the scene, he fled for a little while to Madison, Wisconsin, which was right across the border, and then ended up coming back to Illinois, where he was ultimately arrested. So here's Michael Beschloss's take on why he might have gone to Wisconsin. Why did Highland Park person of interest choose to drive after the mass murder to Wisconsin of all places? Any possibility that Highland Park person drove to Wisconsin after yesterday's atrocity and the knowledge that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges after shootings there? So now let's break down this idiocy for just 1 second, if we can even deal with the level of moron here. So again, this is coming from a guy who should know better, who should actually be pretty smart. And I'm not sure that he doesn't know better. It very well may be that he thinks that you and I are stupid enough to buy this. And unfortunately, apparently, thousands of Americans are. First of all, Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges not because he was in the magical state of Wisconsin that's apparently decided that people can just shoot anybody willy-nilly and it doesn't matter. Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted after multiple clips from that incident in the 2020 Kenosha riots showed him being chased down the street by armed thugs who were threatening to kill him before he opened fire in self-defense. It was a clear case of self-defense. It wasn't even close. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted. That is a lot different than standing on top of a building and sniping people who are watching the local marching band. Massive difference here. So to equate what happened in Highland Park on Monday with what Kyle Rittenhouse did in self-defense, and to say that those are at all the same thing, or that maybe that's why this shooter went to Wisconsin, is utterly ridiculous. Not to mention the fact that, let me explain here how the law works. I'm not even an attorney and I can tell you this. This is extremely basic. The crime occurred in Illinois. So that's where this guy is going to be charged and ultimately tried. The crime didn't occur in Wisconsin. So the fact that he went to Wisconsin doesn't amount to a hill of beans, whether he was arrested in Illinois, which he ultimately was after he came back, or whether he had been arrested in Wisconsin. It wouldn't have mattered. He would have been charged in Illinois because that's where the crime took place. So the idea that he would have driven to Wisconsin because that's some sort of sanctuary for mass murderers is the dumbest thing I think I have heard this week. And frankly, that's saying something. And it just goes to show you again, the left is not interested in finding solutions. The left is not interested in making life better for vulnerable, scared, pregnant women. The left is not interested in looking at the profiles of mass shooters and trying to figure out, why do we all of a sudden have so many young men who are so mentally disturbed and so angry that they want to kill people they've never even met? The left is not interested in solutions. They have none. None whatsoever. The solution to these problems, the solution to these social ills, flies in the face of everything they want in society. A complete lack of personal responsibility, a government takeover of your life, a complete lack of morals and ethics and values, to completely toss out anything that even smacks of Judeo-Christian tradition. The left wants no part of any of this, so they can't actually look at these issues and come up with good faith solutions or even talk about them, because to do so would to question their entire foundation of their entire platform, all of their agenda items. The left wants to systematically revolutionize this country and tear it up by its foundation, and throw out every single good and every single foundational principle that would help address these problems. So they're not interested in finding solutions. So the goal instead, because they can't argue these points on merit, right? They can't argue for gun control laws that make any sense whatsoever. This is a guy that was known to police, that had made threats before. You want to talk about red flag laws? Illinois already has those, and they didn't work. It makes no sense to keep coming up with laws when the ones you have on the books aren't even being enforced. So you can scream all you want about assault weapons bans. Illinois has those. And it didn't work. So what law are you going to pass that would solve this problem when the laws that you say would solve this problem have already been passed and they didn't solve the problem? The left has no solutions. There is nothing that they can offer that goes along with their narrative, that goes along with the platform that they have chosen to push, that goes along with the principles that they espouse. They don't have any solutions that fit with that they can offer to deal with mass shootings, to deal with vulnerable pregnant women that find themselves in difficult situations, and why they have found themselves in those situations in the first place. So instead, the goal is to not address it at all in terms of actually finding solutions in good faith and making solid arguments about why they think that their proposals make sense. The goal is to immediately turn it around, put the right on the defensive, accuse you and me of being uncompassionate and not caring and wanting to rip away women's health care and wanting women to bleed out in the streets from botched abortions or from miscarriages that they can't get health care for. They want to accuse you and me of not caring if parade goers are bleeding out in the streets, because apparently we've got this crazy Trump-supporting white supremacist on the loose that's trying to copy Kyle Rittenhouse, even though none of that makes any sense and there's a total lack of evidence there. But that's the goal. So again, I used to believe that leftists just simply disagreed with the right on solutions, that we wanted the same thing, we were just coming at it from two very different angles, and we disagreed on the solutions. I no longer believe that. I don't think the left is interested in solutions. I think that the left is only interested in making conservatives look like complete and total monsters so that it benefits leftist politicians at the polls. Which is going to be very interesting because I do believe that a lot more people right now in this country care more about high gas prices and inflation than they care about their lack of ability to get an abortion or any of these gun control laws that the left wants to pass. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see. Speaking of a complete and total lack of values, by the way, I did want to leave you with this. I am so sorry because it's going to make you want to pour bleach in your eyes. If you are listening to the audio version of this, that is probably very good for you. If you haven't heard, this is Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack. Just goes to show you, again, if the left didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. And this woman apparently has absolutely no standards for herself, no dignity whatsoever. This woman actually decided that the way to get votes, I kid you not, was to go to a beach, stand on her head, and shake her butt in a thong bikini. Kid you not, this is actually what she did.
Vote Senator Mack.
So apparently that's what passes for a United States politician in 2022. If you thought that the left was absolutely degenerate, if you didn't believe what I'm saying here, that they have absolutely no values, that they want to completely toss out any amount of human dignity or personal responsibility or basic decency, you don't have to look any further than this woman right here. With that, again, I'm going to let you go pour bleach in your eyes, gouge them out with a spoon, whatever you feel like you need to do after seeing that. I will see you back here next Thursday. Make sure that you go download new episodes of The Brittany Hughes Show. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, on Rumble and YouTube. You can also head over to iTunes. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. I would really appreciate that. And I will see you back here next Thursday. Have a safe weekend.